The pleas of the planet wrecker went unanswered by his oft-neglected deity. Howard would have to deal with the consequences of his incontinent behavior on his own. Howard looked up at Rose with fear in his eyes. How would she react to his unseemly behavior? Would she scream at the ill-bred wretch who had the bad taste to eliminate his wastes in his pants while she cuddled him? Or would she dump him in his crib to weep in the darkness as a loathsome creature who was too much bother to change? Rose smiled down at him maternally and said, "Rosie smells a dirty didy, sweetie. Is it yours? Poor little honey bunny. Just as soon as you finish your bottle, Rosie is going to change you into a nice clean didy. Would Bree like that?" Howard gazed up thankfully at her as he lay in her lap. She hadn't gotten angry or castigated him for his failure. Truly she was heaven sent. Howard finished his bottle quickly, peeing continuously as he did so. He couldn't really tell from the sensations of his half-dead penis if he was urinating or not, but the renewed feeling of warmth as he emptied his bladder into his diaper was clue enough. He knew he was thoroughly soaking his diapers and prayed that they wouldn't begin to leak before she got around to changing him. Rosie was too nice a person for that to happen to her. When the bubbles of air gurgled up through the nipple, Rose knew he had finished his BABA. She wasn't surprised when he pooped in his didy after his meal. Her weekend charges often did the same. She patted him on the back to bubble him, producing a prodigious belch that embarrassed Howard almost to the point of starting to cry again, then carried him back to the nursery and laid him on the changing pad on top of the dresser. She saw the distressed expression on Howard's face as she prepared to change him and decided to lighten his mood before unfastening his diaper. He hadn't been sitting in a poopy didy for long, she reasoned, so a few more minutes wouldn't make much difference. Rose grabbed one of his feet in her hand and began to tickle the sole with her other hand. Howard didn't want to laugh, but her tickling was irresistible. Within minutes, he had begun to giggle uncontrollably as Rose switched to tickling his legs and sides, then finished by bending over and blowing a huge labial fricative onto the soft skin of his protuberant tummy. Howard didn't know that Anita had seen to it that Rose would treat him that way if he became depressed. On the sheet of instructions for his care that she had given Rose, Anita had specifically enjoined Rose to tickle Bree and blow Bronx cheers on his abdomen if he became moody. Once Rose had Bree chuckling merrily, she quickly unfastened the tapes of his diaper before he became aware that he was being changed. Seconds later, she had pulled the soggy diaper down between his legs and had crossed his ankles to lift his bottom free of the mess. A few quick but thorough swipes with the baby wipe and his bottom was clean. Rose removed the dirty diaper with one hand, then lowered his naked body down to the plastic mat of the changing pad. Howard squirmed uncomfortably under the young woman's amused gaze, but the high friction of the plastic made his skin stick to its surface and prevented him from sliding sideways. Rose flipped him over on his stomach and began applying a thick coating of Vaseline to the crack between his cheeks to prevent diaper rash. Howard's mood plummeted into mortification as she spread his cheeks and worked a finger-sized gob of lubricant into his anal region. This time he really was horny. The sensation of having his most secret place violated by the young woman's finger as she easily broached the weak muscle of his infant anus and slipped her finger into his bottom made his little penis become fully erect. Howard whimpered uncomfortably from the indignity of the procedure. Rose heard his small cry and stopped what she was doing. She wiped the excess Vaseline from her fingers with a baby wipe and took a pacifier from the clear acrylic storage jar at the back of the changing station where Anita kept his pacifiers. Rose popped the pacifier in his mouth, saying, "Hush, Bubily. Such a tsimis you're making. It's only a didy change, Z-skate. It will all be over in a minute." Then Rose applied a small shower of baby powder to his cute little bottom and rubbed the sweet-smelling cornstarch into every fold of his behind before turning him on his back again. She crossed his ankles again, holding them in one hand as she raised him to slip a fresh disposable under his bottom. Then she dusted his crotch with a light coating of baby powder and began working it into his skin. Rose grinned at the effects the didy change were having on little Bree. His minuscule wee-wee was standing straight up. She smiled down at him and said playfully, "What a sweet schmeckella you have, Z-skate." Rose wondered what he would be like when he grew up. The masculine look of his baby face told her that his tiny balls were already producing ample amounts of testosterone. Her mother had been friends with some of her classmates' mothers when they were babies and had told her that the Jarks she knew at school had looked masculine even when they were infants. From what Rose had heard about the Jarks from her friends, she imagined that by the time Bree was 18, he'd be hung like a horse and have turned into a real ladies' man. Pity the poor woman who married a man like that. She'd have a hard time keeping him from straying from the fold. Unless she found some way to keep him home and dependent on her, he'd be stopping every woman he could bed. When Howard groaned in embarrassment as she smiled at his erectile penis, Rose decided it was time to distract him again. She took his little balls between her fingers and tenderly massaged them for a few minutes. Howard's eyes grew wide as the sensations from his pubic area reached his brain. When she switched to his penis and began to slowly stroke it as if he was her boyfriend, Howard's mind went mad with desire. He sucked on the pacifier furiously in lust as she smiled down at her little charge with a grin of triumph on her beautiful face. Since Howard was incapable of an orgasm, Rose's ministrations couldn't last forever. After about 3 minutes of playing with little Bree's tiny organ, she stopped abruptly and pulled the diaper up between his legs. Within seconds, she had fastened the tapes on the sides of the diaper to make a snug fit and had picked him up to hold him in her arms.